Greetings from the sub-ether, this is Alan, and tonight's short video is Random Numbers in Color Basic. In front of me is the XRoar emulator pretending to be a 1980 TRS-80 color computer with extended color basic, giving us great high-resolution graphics, which we're not going to use, and also 16K of memory, which we're also not going to use. Wanted to talk a little bit about how random numbers were generated in BASIC. Going to start with a program, and I'm going to say for I equals 1 to 7, print a random number between 1 and 100. Next. If I run this, I get those numbers. Each time I run it, I get 7 different random numbers. They're called pseudo-random numbers because it's just using some little formula to determine what these numbers are going to be. And there's actually a pattern to them. You can actually force it to reset to a pattern, and every time you reset, it will generate the same pattern. On startup, it always generates the same sequence of numbers. So if you power up your computer and print random 100, you'll get the same number every single time in Microsoft BASIC. So if I say I equals random of -1 and then run this, you get that sequence. If I pass it a -1 again and run it, you get the same sequence. And it continues. If I run it 3 times in a row, so there's my first 21 numbers. If I reset that random number generator by passing in a negative number and run it, I get that same set of numbers. This is important because if you were doing any type of game that uses randomness, it could be cards in a deck, or the way enemies move around the screen, or generating a random maze, it's not fair to really compete when there's randomness, because you could have random that makes it easy or random that makes it hard. But if you seed by using a random number at the beginning, I can say, what's your random seed going to be? And then simply say the random of whatever they type. So if I start and say, let's do game variation 500, you're going to get the same sequence every single time. That way, you could have your game, let the user choose the level or the variation, and then play through it. And if somebody else wanted to play, they could have exactly the same random numbers as you and be able to truly compete. This also means you could find a random number that made an easy pattern and try to win that pattern and master it, then tell somebody else, hey, just play level 429 and see how well you do. And of course, they could do the same thing. This is interesting when you're generating things. Look at this. I'm going to make a loop here for I equals 1 to 100, and I'm going to randomly print at a random position between 1 and 510. Put an asterisk on the screen. 30, go to 30. There you go. So it's just going to draw these on the screen. Now look at that pattern that's there. If I were to run it again, we should get a different pattern. And run it again. So maybe I'm generating random mines that I have to avoid with my tank or whatever. But by allowing the user to choose that random seed, I equals random of negative whatever they type. Now let's draw this pattern. Using number 1, notice the very bottom of the screen. There's like a block by itself. Then there's a group of 5 blocks. So if I run it again and give it the same seed, I'll get that same pattern. Run it again, the same seed, same pattern. Run it again, give it a different seed, we get a completely different pattern. And if I do it with 50 again, I'll get that same pattern every single time. Look at the bottom right corner of the screen. See the little shapes there? Run it again. Oops. And get it again. So that's just a little tip about the non-randomness of random numbers in Color Basic. So if you're going to be doing any type of game that's based on random numbers, do something like this. That way users can compete fairly by choosing the same set of randomness when they play. Okay, that's it for tonight. Check subethasoftware.com for more blog posts dealing with BASIC and other random topics. Have a good evening.